Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sree's daily global COVID-19 show. My name is Sree Sreenivasan, and it's my honor to convene this daily conversation around various aspects of COVID-19, as well as the upcoming US elections. Tonight's a special night, and so we have a special guest. Kat Calvin is with us. She's an expert on voting. She's the founder of spreadthevote.org, which aims to close the gap between registered voters and voter turnout. We'll talk about the election, the VP debate, and much more. Please follow her at Kat Calvin LA, KatCalvinLA. Please follow her. You'll meet her in just a moment. Hello, everyone. I'm Sree. We're live right now on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn. Tonight's the big night of the VP debate. Unlike the presidential candidates, the VP candidates have one debate, not three. If you can call the first one, we had a debate. It was a mess, and it was mostly the fault of one person. In fact, it was 99% the fault of one person. But tonight, it should be a different tone and a different conversation. Tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern, it's now 8 p.m. Eastern, so we're coming to you an hour early so that we can prep for the debate and then watch the debate more informed thanks to Kat Calvin. If you haven't seen the show before, we are live every single day. And tonight we mark our 211th episode. In our first 200 episodes, we've had more than 1 million viewers, 148 million social impressions, more than 350 guests, 208 of them women from 67 cities and 19 countries, including the chief scientist of the World Health Organization. You can find our entire archives at youtube.com/Sreenet. And you can see we're in partnership with Scroll Global and Scroll.in. We're able to do this because of our awesome sponsors, and we'll tell you more about them a little later. And also possible because of our producers, Rose Horowitz 31 and Vandana Menon at Vandana_Menon. Both of them are awesome as well. Please follow them on social. Now, are you ready to watch the debate? What questions do you have? This is the chance to ask. Tell us where you're watching from, and we'll read your comments, and Kat will answer your questions. And we will talk about this historic night where you have Vice President Pence, the leader of the coronavirus task force that has failed in so many ways, against the first African-American woman and first South Asian woman to be nominated on a major party ticket, and in Kamala Harris. And so we'll talk about all of those issues and so much more with Kat Calvin, who joins me now. She's at Kat Calvin LA and the founder of spreadthevote.org. And we want you to check them out as well. So let me start by saying hello to Kat. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
So great to have you here. I know it's a busy night. My first question to all our guests: how are you? Where are you? And how's your family handling the pandemic?
I'm great. I'm in Los Angeles. I think my family's handling it all right. Everyone luckily is healthy so far, and no one has murdered anybody else. So I feel like we're doing okay.
So you feel like that's progress, or that could be worse?
We went into the lockdown. I was like, how long until somebody's in jail? So far, we're all free.
Tell us, first of all, my eyes are drawn to the Wonder Woman. Is that a poster or a bag? And then on top of that, there you've got a Butch Cassidy poster. Tell us about those, please.
It's all my favorite people. I love Wonder Woman. I think I probably was born on Themyscira and then got sort of lost along the way. And Butch and Sundance have been my favorite since I was little. So I'm having them there. They're just good motivational tools for me as I go through the day.
I love hearing that. That is awesome. So let's talk about the big event tonight. We'll talk about your work, but I just want you to frame, if you can, what is happening tonight and why it's important and why it matters.
Well, tonight we're going to have a debate. Like everything else that this administration does, it's weird. Like there will be no barriers, apparently, although we need barriers. Jamie Harrison brought his own barriers, so maybe Kamala will bring her own. You were right. I don't think we can call what happened last week a debate. It was more sort of three old men shouting at each other and mumbling a lot. And one of them behaving the way we expect him to behave in a debate or pretty much any other forum. So, I think what's important tonight it's always important just to know, vice presidents, the vice presidency is no longer the warm bucket of spit that John Adams said it was. It is actually really important. Like you said, Pence is the leader, apparently, of the COVID response team. We can judge for ourselves how that's gone. Vice presidents are really important. When Joe Biden was vice president, he was tasked with a lot of different work. And so partially it's really critical for us to know who we are voting for and when it comes to vice presidents, because they are actually going to be doing a lot in the White House. But we also have two presidential candidates who are very, very old men. And that's just, they're both in their mid 70s, there is perhaps more of a need for us to know exactly who our vice presidents are going to be now more than ever, because with COVID and with the age of our presidential candidates and the fact that Trump was just in the hospital for having this disease, and he is part of the demographic that it kills the most. We need to know who is going to be president if something happens to these men. So I think that the events over the last few days have really illustrated how critical it is for us to know exactly who we're voting for that second seat.
And we are going to learn a lot about our two vice presidential nominees and the candidates. What are you going to be looking for tonight?
I mean, with these things, first of all, I'm just always looking to see, can we have two adults who can discuss the issues like adults? We didn't last week. I think we have seen Kamala in these positions a lot because we've seen her in so many hearings. And so we sort of know what it looks like when she debates. We also just saw her in the primary. We haven't seen as much of Vice President Pence. And so, partially I'm just interested in, can we have people who can talk about the issues, who can follow basic debate rules? But, I really want people to talk about the issues that matter. We're possibly about to see, in the midst of seeing 40 million people get evicted this fall. And I haven't heard the campaigns talking about that a lot. I really want them to talk about what's happening right now. What are we going to do about the exploding homelessness crisis that's only going to get worse? What do they really think about criminal justice reform and racism in the criminal justice system, and how are they going to fix it? And, please talk about climate change. That's still a thing. I mean, there's so many issues, and I want to know what they think about them. The thing about debates is you get so much time to prepare, right? There's no excuse for a bad answer. There's no excuse for not having an answer to the question. They've been practicing. And so a lot of this is really just, how well did you prepare? How much do you care that you were willing to do the homework in order to show up and have the right answers, whatever the right answers are to you? But we so often see people show up and it's like they just woke up this morning and thought they'd join a debate. And I want to see people who care enough to do the work.
And I certainly think that we will see that Kamala Harris has put in the work. I'm worried that, I'm not worried. My observation would be that Mr. Pence seems to always have that same look on his face, like, I'm not doing any work. I mean, he has a boss who does no work, but at least he's busy all the time. Mr. Pence is just has that kind of, there is a kind of serenity to his face.
I really don't know what he does in his free time. Does he just sit in the chair and stare into a corner? Or what does Mike Pence do on a Friday night? Does anybody know?
Yeah, well, we've been told he's certainly not partying, is what we understand, so that's certainly one of the things we're going to see. If you can put, the way you see Kamala's and Senator Harris, her kind of historic nomination, what does that mean? How do you see it personally versus how you see it for this country versus how you see it for the community of all of us, for Californians? If you can take a couple of different demographics and talk about it too, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, I think that largely it's really important. We talked to a lot of voters, obviously, at Spread the Vote, and you had this whole primary. We actually had this really diverse primary. There were a lot of women. There were a lot of great candidates. People were really excited. And then at the end of the day, it still ended up with two candidates who look exactly like what we're used to seeing and what we've always seen. And it was really disappointing to a lot of people, and particularly in light of, we have these Black Lives Matters protests and people really making their voices heard and saying we need representation. We need people who understand us. And that isn't what the top of the ticket looks like. And so I think for a lot of people, seeing Kamala in the second seat, it's really exciting because it's like, this is someone who at least has the lived experience that so many of us have. And that is a thing that was missing. And you need that kind of experience and empathy to be able to really think about and deal with the issues that we have in a different way than you just can't if you're not coming from that perspective. And if your perspective was shaped so long ago. And so I think that it's been really exciting for people just in that way. It's also, of course, it's thrilling. She's the first Black woman and the first South Asian woman. And I'm always very excited when other groups, other than like, I love Black people, but we're always out here like getting a lot. And I'm like, what about everybody else? And so it's like, yes, she's dipping out of multiple buckets, and it's very exciting. And she's so incredibly smart. And I think one amazing thing about Kamala is that she, you see her in the Senate Judiciary hearings, and it's so exciting. You're like, oh my God, 3 words from her and this person's going to spontaneously combust. And she's not afraid to be direct and to be brilliant and to be, as scary as she needs to be and whatever. And we need more examples of that, not just for girls, but for everybody. So often hearings, and when we see our politicians, it's hard to take them seriously. They're whining, or they're being nonpartisan, or they're being super partisan, or they're not really getting to the point. And, with Kamala, it's like, you're about to watch a really brilliant, really well-educated, really well-prepared woman actually just go to town on a hearing. And I love that. And it's exciting to know that we have this really intelligent, accomplished, fearless woman who could possibly lead the nation. And so I think that's exciting. For California, I mean, it's a little sad because she is our senator and we don't want to lose her. But it's also exciting because, if she gets elevated to the vice presidency, then we get to, choose someone else to be a senator. And, we're really lucky. All of my representatives, except for city council, are women. State legislature, Congress, I'm represented by Maxine Waters, thank you very much, and my senators. And so the idea of, being able to choose somebody else who is female or is a person of color or who represents different demographics to represent the state of California is really thrilling too. So I don't know. I think that there's so much that's exciting about it. And I think there are very few people who are more exciting to watch debate than Kamala Harris. She's going to bring the goods. I can't wait.
Like that, bringing the goods. And what is the speculation if she does get elevated? Who is in the running? Do you know? Have you paid enough attention? Like, who are some of the names in the Senate who could possibly throw their hats? It'll be like obviously it'll be a Democrat most likely. So, but who are like does the mayor of San Francisco, for example, have a shot, or is that too soon?
We'll see. I think that what's interesting is, California, every election you have 80 people running, right? I think we already have like 20 something people running for mayor, and that's not coming up for 2 years. So I know that we've been talking, there's a lot of interesting conversation, right? Because we've got London Breed, who's fantastic. We've got our Secretary of State, Alex Padilla. We have some really good people who could be appointed. There have also been some talks about, like, why don't we appoint like a Barbara Boxer or somebody who isn't interested in running again, so that the people of California can make a fresh choice. And there are a lot of really great women. I'm on the board of a PAC called California Women's List, and we work to get women elected to the California State Legislature. And there are some great women. I mean, we just saw some real amazing courage by Buffy Wicks, who is this great assembly member, and she just had a baby. They wouldn't let her vote from home virtually. So she brought her newborn baby onto the floor so that she could vote, and was just a total badass about it. Autumn Burke is my state legislative representative, and she's fantastic. And so I think that, one great thing about California is we do have a lot of great women, a lot of great people of color. And so when when Kamala was selected as VP, there were a lot of really good, solid names being thrown out. And we realized, like, wow, we actually have, not an undecent bench, which is great because Democrats aren't great at bench building, but we have a really good bench of folks who could be chosen. And I'm of two minds. I want someone really great and young and exciting, but I also wouldn't mind having someone who isn't interested in running for re-election, so that we could choose rather than the governor choosing. So I don't know. I have multiple minds on it, but we have a lot of really good choices.
I should point out, thank you, that's really great analysis. I should point out that even though there are a lot of really lot of polls and everything coming out that Biden's ahead, and therefore this looks like he has a really good shot, that it doesn't mean anything. In fact, the really unusual thing I saw today, among many unusual things, is the following tweet from Joe Biden saying, "Ignore the polls, folks. There's too much at stake for us to get complacent." How much do you worry about this? Typically, a candidate will do what they call a show of strength, right? Like, I'm ahead already. I got this in the bag. And he is saying, I don't have this. Talk about that, and then we'll talk about your organization.
I mean, honestly, after 2016, I can't believe we're still doing polls. Like, are you kidding me? It blows my mind. And every time a poll comes out, my friends and I are just like, really? People are still reading these? Look, polls failed us in 2016. I have no faith in them. I have no interest in them. I'm not paying attention to them. All I am doing is trying to get as many people to the polls as possible. And that's the only poll I care about. And then we will find out, sometime in mid to late November what the result was. But I think Biden is exactly right here, that we can't pretend that the polls matter, because we've done that. We've been down that road. And, what happens is that people get comfortable. And particularly in a year like this, where voting is just more difficult than it normally is, which is saying something, because voting is already really difficult in America. But now you've got vote by mail confusion. You've got laws that are still constantly changing. We're going to see incredibly long lines. Like, it's going to be tough. And we don't want people to feel like they don't need to show up because decisions are already being made. Look, I will never shut up about local and state elections. They matter so much. And I think one of the other big dangers of focusing on presidential polls is that if people feel comfortable, they don't show up and vote for president, but then they're also not showing up and voting for city council or for their House of Representatives and their senator or for their water board. I voted today. I'm very excited. I already dropped my ballot in. And, California has a ton of ballot measures that are really important. I voted to end cash bail. I'm really excited about this. And we need people to show up. And so we can't pretend that the presidential election is the only thing that matters and that those polls matter, because then people don't show up. Right? And we need everybody this year. We need everybody.
I like hearing that we need everybody and they should be there. Here is spreadthevote.org. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so I started Spread the Vote in early 2017 after the 2016 elections. And we've got two big mandates. Our first goal is we help people get IDs, primarily in voter ID states. There are over 21 million eligible voters who don't have photo ID, like the ID you get at the DMV. But 36 states require ID to vote. And you don't just need ID to vote. You need it for jobs, for housing, for medical care, frustratingly for COVID tests in a lot of places. And for folks who don't have ID, life is incredibly difficult. A huge percentage of our clients are people experiencing homelessness, are returning citizens, are very young and very elderly. They're often people, domestic violence survivors, and just people who need to start over again. And for getting ID, we've all been to the DMV. You have to take a stack of papers like this. It can be expensive. Transportation is tough. The DMVs aren't always known for the best customer service, and it can be really challenging. And so what we do is help walk people through that whole process. We get all the documents they need. We pay for everything. We take them to the DMV. We make sure they get the ID in their hands. After that, we then do a lot of work on helping people actually get to the polls. So 77% of our clients have never voted before. In 2018, we had first-time clients from the ages of 18 to 79. And so we do a lot of work helping folks get educated. We make our own voter guides, which are specifically designed for first-time voters, which you can actually find digital versions of at spreadthevote.org/2020 guides. We do a lot of taking people to the polls. This year, we're paying for COVID safe transportation, and we're sending, pizza and guides to shelters and doing Zoom education parties. We've got guides going to, barber shops across the country and jails. We're doing a program with vote.org called Vote by Mail in Jail, in which we're helping incarcerated citizens vote around the country while they're incarcerated. So we're really just working hard to get folks to actually vote. We focus a lot on voter registration in this country, which is great. So you have to do it in every state except North Dakota. But 83% of eligible voters are registered to vote. But we only saw 55% turnout in 2016, and that was a record. And so there's this huge gap between registration and turnout. And what we're focused on is let's get people to actually turn out. So we don't really look at our registration numbers. We look at our numbers of people who actually voted.
Wow, that is kind of interesting and unusual for us to, because all the attention, as you know, is paid to the other question of how many people have registered. And we want to remind people 100 million people who could have voted in 2016 didn't vote for a variety of reasons. Part of it is that it's on a Tuesday on a working day. That's like one part of it, but there's so many other barriers. Can you talk about the website here says STV is putting it all on the line for 2020? And what is lastelection.org?
Yeah, so when COVID hit and we had to pull all of we've got over 1,000 volunteers, we've got staff in all our states, and we had to pull everybody off the ground. And I was like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? I, like every other voting rights org, had to totally revamp our plans. And so I really sat down and looked at, well, what are all of the issues that I think we're going to see in 2020 that are either specific to or exacerbated by this year, or things that we just see. Oh, that countdown, I try not to look at it. Or things that we just see every year. And we started running and building so many campaigns that I built a website specifically to show what we're doing. So it shows everything from the grassroots GOTV that we're doing, and there's a link to our election guides. We did some voter ed courses. So if you go to votewithed.org, we've got videos with the Center for American Progress and Ballot Ready and American Association for People with Disabilities about how to vote. We're doing Vote by Mail in Jail, which I just talked about. The CEO of Vote.org and I started a podcast this year to try to help educate people and talk folks through voting this year. And so that comes out every Thursday, Vote the Podcast. We also did, wait, keep scrolling, I can't remember everything we're doing. We did, so if you're interested in volunteering, one thing we're doing in all 12 of our states is Comfort at the Polls, where we'll be going to polling places that traditionally have really long lines, and all through the night until everyone's done voting, we'll be providing snacks and pizza and hand warmers and whatever people need. We're doing some rapid response work with Piper Parabo, who's been awesome about helping us get the word out. A couple weekends ago, there were some really big problems in Virginia, and so we started signing people up for emergency election protection and getting folks out that way. And then we launched a campaign called Read the Effing Directions. So in 2016, over 300,000 absentee ballots were thrown out. In the primaries, we already saw over 500,000 ballots get thrown out. And we know that number is going to be incredibly high. It's probably going to be in the millions this November. And a big reason that absentee ballots get thrown out is because people just don't read the directions. Sign the back of the envelope. If I could just go to every American and just yell at them, sign the back of the envelope, that's a huge reason. Or get it in on time, know when it needs to arrive and when it needs to be postmarked. There's so many rules. And it's confusing. And young people actually have their ballots thrown out 5 times more than the general population. So we built a site and a big campaign called Read the Effing Directions. You can go to readtheeffingdirections.com, and we've got all of the instructions that you need for all 50 states plus DC, so that you can figure out exactly how to make sure your ballot gets counted.
This is, at one level, this is so exciting, and almost every level. It's so exciting, so wonderful you're doing this work, but it's also so sad that this work has to be done, that you personally seem to be doing 20 different projects in order to just vote in this country. How outrageous is that? Why aren't we more mad about that? That every other country, you try to make it as simple as possible for people to vote. You want more people to vote. Even in other countries where they may not be as democratic, they encourage people to vote. Here, there's an entire system and an entire party that seems to, all they want to do is constrain voters and not encourage voting.
Yeah. So my favorite voting story comes out of India. In India, there is a monk who lives on a mountain. It is a 300-mile, 4-day hike from town. And every election, there is a group of poll workers who strap on a polling booth and they take a 4-day hike up the mountain so this one monk can vote, and then they hike all the way down. That is a country that cares about making sure that every single one of its citizens can vote. That is the exact opposite of America, where every single demographic except white men who own property have had to fight for the right to vote. And every single year, there are organizations like mine run by a girl in her bedroom, or that are like bigger and better funded, that may have office space or whatever, but we are all doing this work. And it's crazy. I've had so many public officials sort of jokingly say, you should be a state agency. Haha. It's like, no, we should be a state agency. You know, we're the official ID partner for a lot of state agencies, for departments of corrections, where, you know, we've had entire states look to us, look to me in my room and say, oh, so you guys can pay for all of the IDs for the returning citizens who leave the jails in our entire states. I'm like, you're a state. I'm a Black girl in LA. I shouldn't have to do that. And it's absurd. And it is really infuriating, because the thing is that this shouldn't have to be my job. You know, we should be working as hard as we can to make sure everyone can vote, because that's the country we live in. Because it's important, because we are a democracy. You know, it's so difficult to explain my job to my friends who live in other countries. You know, like in every other developed country, in most developing countries, there's a national ID. Everyone just has an ID. And when I try to explain to people what I do, they always stop. They're like, what do you mean you have to help people get an ID? I don't get it. And they like, I have to keep them. No, let me explain how America works. Let's start at the beginning, because they don't get it, because it's so dumb and it shouldn't be. And yeah, I do spend a lot of, I try to spend less time, but a good amount of time really being angry, because, you know, I have to do this, my staff has to do this. There are so many people, so incredible, you know, who are donating time and money to this. They should be going to other things, because the state should be dealing with this. This shouldn't be something that we have to do.
Yeah, well, it's so kind of hard to think about this, but I do want to first of all comment on the amazing artwork you have on the caricature. So who did that?
So we had for Read the Effing Directions, we had a lot of really great partners, and actually we had a group of animators who live here in LA who made this animated video for us that is hilarious, and also I think gets the point across perfectly, and we're really amazing about it.
Oh, that's great. And then also there are these, like the drawings of, you know, of like your logo drawings and the QR codes. All of them have like these cute little drawings. And
so that's our mascot. Her name is Ed. We love her, and she is. I put her on everything because she's just the cutest thing. We really wanted to have a mascot that, you know, looked like us, and was this like really like cute, fun, you know, girl who's excited about voting.
Excellent. So let's watch a couple of your videos. So this one is called Read the Effing Directions. And there's Ed.
There she is.
That's great. Let's look at a couple of other. Let's see. I love Roy Wood Jr. So I wonder what's going to happen here now.
For the love of God, read the directions.
Okay, here we go.
For the love of God, read the directions.
Read the directions. Read the directions.
So you're obviously voting. That's great.
And you want to do it safely by mail. Even better.
But please, pretty please, and we want to say this as bluntly as possible.
Just read the directions.
You can vote by mail anywhere. You're doing it from home. You can do it from your bedroom. You can do it from the toilet. You could change democracy from your toilet. But that ballot don't mean if you don't read the directions.
We know it's the part you always want to skip. We do too. Over 500,000 ballots were tossed out in the primaries this year because people didn't read the directions.
So please, read the directions. In fact, we made it easy for you. Just go to this website and figure out how to fill out your ballot.
Just go to readtheeffingdirections.com.
Your team must have had fun putting that together.
Yeah, that was great. This really fun production company called Mediocre Productions that somehow knows like all the comedians were like, oh my god, I bet we can get some really funny comedians to do this, and they did, and it was great. And you can go on YouTube and find more. This is a video. So we made some videos to encourage people to become poll workers. It's not too late. And we are facing a huge poll worker shortage because 50% of poll workers in America are 61 or older. So John Cameron Mitchell, who is the amazing creator of Hedwig and the Angry Inch, wrote this song for us and worked with a really beautiful puppeteer to make this video.
All right, let's see this. And it's kind of all very meta. The ad for this, the thumbnail for this ad is
on purpose.
Well, the algorithm has already figured us out, Kat.
Oh,
okay,
man.
here we go. We're going to play this now.
When I woke, I found myself oh so ready to vote. This is my dream. Come November, with the pandemic still raging, youth of America signed up at their election locations to save our elder poll workers from risk of contagion. This is my American dream.
If you're young, healthy, looking for some cash, and invested in the health of America's seniors, if you're committed to protecting our democracy, become a poll worker.
Wow, very neat. Tell us about that. How much time does it take to do it? Because it's not just straight animation. There was like the cardboard work and the song and all of that. That's just amazing. And I recognized Ed in there again. Ed was there in cardboard form.
I put Ed everywhere. Yeah, so Robin Fernhardt was the puppeteer and John Cameron Mitchell, and they spent several weeks, which it should have taken a lot longer, but they were really amazing about wanting to get it out in as much time as possible. And so they built out the whole thing, and it goes through like multiple levels of approval, etc. But they really worked quickly. This next one was directed by Gabby Sidibe, who was Precious and an Empire, an American horror story, and is really great, and directed this little Work the Polls PSA for us.
She directed it. Awesome. Let's take a look.
The gun is jammed, okay? It's not my fault. Oh, figure it out. It's a computer. Okay, sure.
Why are you fools still down here playing that game?
Sorry, Pops. COVID kicked our social life to the curb, so we're bored in the house.
I'm in the house bored. Might as well entertain ourselves.
You need to get your butts up and go work the polls. They're hiring.
Polls.
Not that.
Oh no, it's stuck. Hold on, let me see if we can. What happened? Anyway, we'll catch the rest of it, I'm sure. But tell us about that. That was great.
Yeah, so we were thinking about making a PSA.
Okay, sorry, what's it?
Well, how much does it pay?
More than you make on that couch.
Nice.
Yeah, we were sitting around it, and the joke was right there, and we were like, "Should we do it?" Yeah, we have to do it. Like, you have to do a Work the Polls joke, and the guys were great about it.
Yeah, that's it. Sounds fun. I should just say we talked about Gabby on the show because we had Sapphire on the show. Sapphire, the author who wrote the novel Push that became the movie, the Oscar-winning movie Precious, and talked about how they found Gabby and her great story and how she has had all the amazing work that she has done, and how she thought of the character when Sapphire wrote the book herself and how she was thinking about it. It was very moving. I believe it's the 25th or 35th anniversary of the novel already coming out next year. So that's how fast. I mean, the movie came later, of course, but
I didn't realize it settled. But yeah, it's an incredible movie, and I love that you talked about it. She was a total sweetheart. It was like kind of her to make this.
That's great, folks. If you're just tuning in, we just have a few more minutes with Kat Calvin. She's at Kat Calvin LA. She's from spreadthevote.org. Not from. She's the founder of spreadthevote.org. She was telling me that a few minutes ago that somebody from a state agency said you should be doing XYZ, and she said, wait, I'm just a black girl in my bedroom in LA. You're the state agency. Why are you coming to us for that? So let's talk a little bit about money. How do we get people to support you? How much support do you get from the government or from anybody else? And how does that all work?
Sure. So you can donate at spreadthevote.org/donate. We are not government funded. We should be, but we're not. And so we have just a lot of online donors, some small online donors who give to us who are incredible. We also, there's some, as you know, sort of small and medium foundations that have been really generous and donated to us. And yeah, it's really, we sort of survive on the generosity of people who think that voting is important, who think that helping people get IDs is important. And shows like this help because you help expand the message and get it out there. So thank you.
No, thank you. We're going to do so everyone please donate at spreadthevote.org/donate. You can see the address on the screen. And let's just do a quick global tour. People are watching from all over. Jonathan's watching from the East Village. He's watched 211 episodes in a row. And your favorite memory of New York? I know you're in LA, so.
My favorite, that's tough. There's so many good ones. I remember when I was 16 and I went to New York for the first time with my mom, and I'm an Army brat, so we sort of lived all over, and then we were in Seattle, and it was the very first time going. I mean, when you're a 16-year-old girl and you go to New York for the first time, it's like incredibly magical, and I think everyone remembers their first time going to New York. And now I've been a trillion times, and I've gone as, like a professional and all these things, but you always remember, sort of just how big and incredible and busy and exciting it is. And when you're 16 and you're in high school and you're just desperate to get out, you're like, oh my God, this is where life is happening. And I'm stuck in my small town.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Let's see. Pradnya's watching from Silver Spring, Maryland, which is right outside DC. A favorite DC memory?
Well, I actually lived in DC for 5 years before I moved to LA. I love DC. I lived on 8th Street, the best street. I moved there after law school, and it's where some of the people who are my closest friends to this day, including Daniel Lombardi, who did the graphic design for Read the Effing Directions, and actually a lot of our design, where I met them. And DC is really a place where I really grew up, and it's where I started my first nonprofit. DC is really, really an important city to me. I love it.
I love hearing that, and that's awesome. Let's see who else is watching. My dad is watching from Kerala in India. So hi, Acha, love you. Have you been to India?
I haven't yet. I really want to go. It's on my list.
All right, good. A lot of people after being on my show and where we read all these cities, they say they work on their list after that. Neil Parekh is checking in late from Springfield, Virginia, but checking in. He is part of our team at Digimentors. We do social media and digital and virtual events consulting, and he and our team this week put together a 24-hour live stream for World Teachers Day, which was incredibly moving, exhausting, as you can imagine. And he said, read the effing directions. Yes. Yeah. And Rose on our team says, so proud to have Kat Calvin on the show. Please share. And so she's tweeting. So everyone, please go to Rose Horowitz 31 and please share that. And Neil says, I was thinking the same thing before you played the Work the Polls video. You had to go there. It would have been wrong not to do it.
Exactly. It was laying right there. We had to pick it up.
And Neil says, where in Seattle?
So I went to school outside of Seattle, Puyallup, Washington, lovely little town. We have the fair. If anyone's ever been to Washington State, you've heard of the Puyallup Fair. I will not sing the song, even though it is now immediately popped into my head. And then my family lived in Bellevue for a long time, and my brother actually is still in Seattle, and he's a DJ on Seattle's NPR station. So if you are in Seattle, listen to OC Notes. Or not, he's online. You can listen to him anywhere.
What is his name?
His name is OC Notes. Is his music name that he goes by.
OCNOTES?
OCNOTES. Yep, OC Notes.
Nice. So if I don't ask you a question for 60 seconds, will you just have to burst into song?
Oh no, not gonna happen. I'm not the musician in the family. He is.
Neil is prompting you here.
Oh, Neil, you know the song. Oh, it's torture. I'm not doing it. I can't be pressured.
All right. My mom's watching from Kerala. Hi, Amma. Love you. It was just her birthday on Mahatma Gandhi's birthday, October 2nd.
Oh.
And I couldn't be there. And so of the many things I'm mad about the COVID situation, obviously everything else that's been so terrible, it's the fact that so many families have not been able to see their loved ones. Just in this country, I know people who live a couple of states away who haven't been able to see their parents or their children. or whatever. And it's really, really frustrating. All right. In the few minutes we have left, what are some things you're going to watch for tonight? How will you know that that Senator Harris is having an impact, that Mike Pence is having an impact, et cetera?
You know, I think that right now we're not dealing with people who sort of don't know who they're voting for, right? Like, you know, if you're voting for Biden, Harris, or Trump, Pence. I think what we have is a lot of people who don't know if they're going to vote at all, and who really need to feel like the person they vote for cares about the issues they care about and represents them. And so what I'm going to be looking for is, are they talking to American people, and not the like focus groups that they usually talk to, who, you know, nobody actually recognizes as an actual American, but do they actually see the issues that are happening here? Do they get that we haven't seen our families for 7 months because we've been stuck in our rooms, and that so many people are losing their jobs and their homes, and that, you know, parents are losing their minds because their children are at home, you know, that women are being sort of pushed back 20, 30, 40 years in the workplace because they're having to take care of their kids. Like, do they get what's happening? Do they understand that people are really, really feeling the effects of climate change? I mean, I live in LA, where there have been, you know, 4 weeks in the last 2 months when I haven't been able to go outside every day because the smoke has been so bad, right? And so do they get what's really happening on the ground? And do they have answers to how they're going to fix it? You know, are they going to be more interested in having, you know, scoring political points and having the one-liners to get picked up on Twitter, or are they really going to talk to us? And I think that's what's going to be important.
What is your message to folks who don't let Kamala Harris cut her any slack? There are people who think she is a raging communist and full-on liberal, and there are people who think she is the police, basically, right? Like, how can one person be both? So talk to those folks who are watching right now who are feeling like, oh, she was a prosecutor, so that means she was a terrible person, and therefore, or the other way around. Talk to both of them, please.
Look, the reality is she's really in the middle, right? Like, I wish sometimes, you know, Trump or Republican will say like, oh, Biden, Harris, they're going to give everybody health care. It's going to be terrible. I'm like, I wish they would. Like, you're explaining my dream world right now, but it's not going to happen. Like, the reality is, you know, Kamala is brilliant and she's incredible. She's actually come out and said, look, these are decisions I made as a prosecutor that I'm proud of. These are the ones that people get confused about that I understand, and here's the reality. And here's one or two that, you know what, yeah, I have learned now that I don't love those. She's, you know, I wish that she was more of a raging communist than she is, and she's not, you know, like I think that it's funny because she's so in the middle that people are really trying to make her one of each things. And she is, you know, she's slightly progressive, but not as progressive as the most progressive wing. She's not as conservative as the most conservative wing, but she is really smart and really driven and really hardworking, and a woman who knows what it means to have to be a Black and South Asian woman in America working her way up. And you can see, you know, she surrounds her staff is always very diverse. I mean, I have very good friends who are diverse in a lot of different ways who have worked for Kamala in the past. And she hires a lot of women. So I think you can see the people around her represent a lot of her values. And I think that you also need to look at, you know, what your values are. And look, you got two choices. You've got Biden, Trump, right? Harris, Pence. So you got to choose one of the two, because one of them is going to be president. And so I don't think there could be two more different people than Harris and Pence. And so you have to look realistically. Like, do you wish it was somebody else? Sure, but it's not. Those are your two choices. So make one.
And that's why when people say they don't know if they're undecided or not, like today of all people, do you remember Ken Bone, the guy in the red sweater who was undecided the last time? And then he popped up today saying, I'm undecided again. Like, these are journalists journalists are just falling for this guy and everybody else who says they're really undecided. I think you've absolutely hit it on the head. It's not undecided. It's people who have not made the decision to vote. They know. If you don't know what is going on right now, what's happening in the world after 200,000 deaths, and America is a quarter of the corona deaths in the world and is only 5% of the world population. And by the way, America also is only 5% of the world's population, but has a quarter of the prison population. There is some correlation there of a broken system that we need to fix. And for everybody who is a little bit unhappy with Joe Biden for something or the other, you have to learn from the Republicans. They get in line, as they say, and Democrats don't get in line, right? But these folks the Republicans get in line. They don't care if you don't tick every single thing. He's your man, she's your woman, let's go. And that's not what's happening here with the Democrats. And that's what's so screwed up about this.
Well, and the thing I think is important to remember, and this is something I say 12 times a day, voting is not the whole movement, but it's a part of it, right? So like our jobs don't end on November 3rd. I voted today. That doesn't mean I get to sleep for the next 6 months. It means that we keep fighting no matter who wins, whether Biden wins, whether Trump wins, whether the mayor you like wins or doesn't win, right? Like no matter who wins, you keep working. After we elect whoever it is, we still are calling our members of Congress. We're still pushing them for better legislation. We're still pushing them for, to change things we want change. So, sure, Biden and Harris aren't perfect. Vote for them if they match your values, right? And then on November 5th, on January 22nd, start fighting for whatever you want. If you are a Trump Pence fan, vote for them. But I'm going to guess that they're not 100% doing everything you like. So on November 5th, push them for whatever they want. Fight in the Senate, fight in the House, fight in your state legislature. Voting is one part of the process. You're never going to have a perfect candidate, ever. I got to vote for Maxine Waters today. She's about as close as it gets. But for the rest of you, you're never going to have a perfect candidate. But you have to vote for the best option and then push them. And then while you're doing that, start paying attention to who you want to run. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's someone who you really admire. And say, hey, you know what? I really think you'd be amazing on city council. I would be honored to help fundraise for you and to help campaign for you and work to shape the democracy you want. But don't not vote now because it's not perfect. Vote now because it's not perfect. And then keep working and keep pushing to get it there.
Thank you so much. I'm going to talk to the camera for a second while you catch your breath and think of a final comment that I'd like you to, the final thoughts you'd like to share with us. And let me just talk to everyone and say, folks, thank you so much for joining us. We've had this amazing conversation with Kat Calvin. She's at KATCALVINLA on Twitter. And I know I learned a lot, as you did as well. This is such an important evening. Please encourage your family and friends to watch the debate and understand the difference in these two candidates and what's happening here tonight. The whole world will be watching. I also want to tell you that we are involved with this event called Desi's Vote Impact Summit 2020. 4 members of Congress will be there. Ami Bera, Pramila Jayapal, Ro Khanna, and Raja Krishnamurthy, and civil rights leaders like Vanita Gupta will be there as well. This is this Saturday, 1 to 4 Eastern. Saturday, 1 to 4 Eastern. And the registration link is in the bottom right, iaimpact.org/summit. iaimpact.org/summit. And we would love to have you all join us. And with that, let me bring Kat back on and see if she can share with us some final thoughts.
So 3 things. 1, vote as early as possible and make a voting plan. Know how you're voting, by mail, early in person, election day in person, where you're voting, etc. Make a plan, prepare, look at the sample ballot, know how you're going to vote, and then vote as early as possible. I got my ballot yesterday. I turned it in today. I usually procrastinate for weeks, not this year. And then 2, make sure that all of your friends and family are voting. You can have a virtual voting party. If you go to votewithed.org, we've got a video and a ton of resources so that you can make your own virtual voting party. Make sure that your friends and family are making plans, that they know how to vote. Annoy them, bother them. Be the annoying person who calls every day, like, have you voted yet? Have you voted yet? Have you voted yet? Make sure that they vote. And then 3, it is going to take a lot longer than we're used to know the results of the presidential election, and probably most of the state and local elections too. It takes a really long time to count absentee ballots. And so after you vote, after you make sure everybody votes, after election day, just sit down and wait. Sit down, keep calm, wait for the count, ignore the media, ignore the chaos. If you think things are crazy now, starting November 4th, the world's going to go insane. But it's going to be a while. It's probably going to be several weeks.
Oof.
Just, You got to just chill, you know, watch every episode of Girlfriends on Netflix, learn how to play the ukulele, do something. But you like the longer it takes, the better, because it means they're counting every single vote. But you're going to have to wait. You're not going to know the night of election night, and that's okay. And prepare for it now, and prepare to tune out all of the noise.
Wow, what you give us so much wisdom in just about 90 seconds. I'm so grateful to you, but I'm really not happy to hear that there will be several weeks perhaps of this. So I'm going to blame you for it and have you come back on the show and keep us entertained for at least one of those evenings where you'll share some light, and we'll talk about how it all went, if that's okay. And then I should ask you, how can we be allies of the Black community, those of us who are not Black in America? I'm going to tell you the answer that Kimberly Crenshaw gave us, the great Columbia Law School professor, who said simply, say their names. And she said that's what you should do. And so on this show, every single night, we read some of the names. Obviously, we don't even have all the names, but we will say some in a little bit. If you have a moment, we'll ask you to join us. But what is your advice to non-African Americans on how we can be allies?
So look, we're all in this together, right? Like, there are a lot of us who are brown in America, who are people of color in America, who are queer in America, right? Or Muslim in America. And I think it's really important for us to remember that we will get further together than apart, right? We have to stand together. We have to fight for the voting rights of everybody. We have to fight for the rights to be in this country for everybody, and the right to, you know, marry for everybody, and et cetera. Like, I think that we so often get so caught up in our own issues that we don't pay attention to the fact that we've got to fight together. You know, I spend as much time as I can reminding people that the people who are who are discriminated against the most in this country, who have the biggest challenges, who have the lowest pay and the worst health disparities, et cetera, are the people who this country belongs to, Native Americans, right? And we all should be fighting for the rights of people who we stole this country from, who are currently living on reservations that are being ravaged by COVID and nobody cares, who didn't even have the right to vote all across the country until the 70s, and now are, you know, it's being torn away and prevented in a million different ways. And it's so important for us to remember that we are in this together. And if we're all just fighting for South Asian rights and Latino rights and Black rights and et cetera, we're never going to get anywhere. We're either in this together or we're not going anywhere at all.
How beautifully put. Thank you so much. If you have another 2 minutes, we can say their names together. Can we do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay,
so we're going to do that. This is what Kimberly Crenshaw asked us to do. We use this cover of Time magazine. I don't know if you remember seeing this cover, Kat. This is Titus Caffer, haunting cover on the left, and you see the names on the border. And on the right, you're seeing a young Larcenia Floyd with a young George Floyd in her arms. She would die 2 years almost to the day that he was murdered on camera. And then that was in Minneapolis. And now they're buried next to each other in Houston. So thank you for joining me and saying the names. I will say a handful, and then you could say a handful, and we'll switch back and forth. I put you on the spot here. I know you've not had a chance to prep at all. But thank you very much for doing it. We consider this a real honor when we can do this. So thank you. And these are some of the names: Trayvon Martin, Yvette Smith, Eric Garner, Michael Brown, and Laquan McDonald.
Tanisha Anderson, Akai Gurley, Tamir Rice, Jermaine Reed, Natasha McKenna, Eric Harris,
Walter Scott, Freddie Gray, William Chapman, Sandra Bland, Darius Stewart, and Samuel Dubose.
Janet Wilson, Callan Rockmore, Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, Joseph Mann, Terrence Crutcher, Chad Robertson.
Jordan Edwards, Aaron Bailey, Stefan Clark, Danny Ray Thomas, Antoine Rose, and Botham Jean.
Tatiana Jefferson, Michael Dean, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd.
And those are not even all the names, Kat. Those are not even all the names since George Floyd was murdered. Yeah. And here we are. Thank you so much for joining me and saying those names. Every time I say them, I just think about the lives that were destroyed They were one of the things I point out is the tragedy is that some of those are household names, and some of the other tragedies that some of them are names people have never heard of. Each of them had lives, loves, and stories, and no one deserved to die that way. With that, we are so grateful to Kat Calvin for being here at Kat Calvin LA. Please follow her. Please follow the incredible work of spreadthevote.org. Please support them. She is just a young lady as she said, in her bedroom, trying to help America and help all her fellow Americans. We're so grateful to you, Kat. Thank you very much. Enjoy the debate, and I look forward to seeing your tweets and everything else after this. And good luck with everything.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you, everybody. We'll say goodnight to Kat, and we'll say goodnight to everybody here. Thank you for being here. We'll be back tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern. Please be here as we continue to talk about what's happening with the pandemic and everything else. And the debate starts in 5 minutes. Please tune in and let us know, and tweet at me at Sree on Twitter, SREE. And we'll see you soon, everybody. Thanks very much.